Scotland is not one country that was always there. It is at least 5 different peoples who were welded together, and the joins are still visible. Before there was a Scotland, there were kingdoms on that ground that had nothing to do with each other. There were the Picts, who left carved stones and almost no words. There were the Gaels of Dál Riata, who came across from Ireland into Argyll and brought the language and the name. There were the Britons of Strathclyde, who spoke something close to Welsh and ruled the Clyde from a rock at Dumbarton. There were the Angles, who pushed north out of Northumbria and took Lothian, which is why the southeast of Scotland has spoken a Germanic language since before England existed. And there were the Norse, who took Orkney, Shetland, Caithness, and the whole western seaboard, and held them for centuries as part of Norway. 5 peoples, 5 languages. Separate kingdoms with separate kings, fighting each other for 600 years. And they did not blend evenly. They merged in patches, and each region kept the stamp of whoever had held it. Which means that when hereditary surnames finally formed in Scotland, they formed on top of that map. Your Scottish surname is not just a family. It is a region, and a region means a people, and a people means a kingdom. If your surname is on this list, this is the Scottish kingdom you come from. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and which corner of Scotland your people came out of. Any name, any county. And subscribe. The names on this list came from your comments. Number 15. Sinclair. The Earldom of Orkney. And for most of its history, Orkney was not Scottish at all. It was Norwegian. The Northern Isles were ruled by Norse earls under the crown of Norway for around 600 years, and Norse was spoken there long after. The Sinclairs held that earldom in the later medieval period, and it was a Sinclair earl who built the chapel at Rosslyn. Orkney and Shetland only came to Scotland in 1468, as part of a Danish royal dowry that was never fully paid. If your name is Sinclair, your kingdom was Norway's. Number 14. Gun. Caithness, the far northeastern corner of the mainland, and Norse again. Clan Gun traces itself back to an ancestor called Gunni, a Norse personal name, and that whole country was under Scandinavian control for centuries. This is the seam where Norse and Gaelic ground directly into each other, and the Guns are what came out of it. A Highland clan, speaking Gaelic, carrying a Viking name, in a county that was governed from Norway. Number 13. Sutherland. The name proves the point better than any document could. Sutherland means the Southland, and it is one of the most northerly counties on the entire British mainland. It is only the Southland if you are sitting in Orkney looking down. That name was given by Norsemen, and the fact that it stuck is the whole history of the Scottish North in one word. Number 12. Ross. The Earldom of Ross, the great northern province running clean across the country from the east coast to the western sea. Ross was one of the major powers of medieval Scotland, and control of it was fought over so hard that it eventually became the flashpoint between the Scottish crown and the Lords of the Isles, the dispute that would end with the whole lordship being destroyed. If your name is Ross, your kingdom is the North, and it was worth a war. Number 11. Murray. And here is one of the biggest facts in Scottish history, hiding inside one of its commonest surnames. Murray is Moray, and Moray was not a province. It was a rival kingdom. The rulers of Moray considered themselves the equals of the kings of Alba to the south, and spent generations at war with them. And the most famous of them was a Mormaer of Moray called Macbeth, who killed King Duncan, took the throne of Scotland and ruled it for 17 years. If your name is Moray, your kingdom nearly won. Number 10. Macduff, Fife, and the most senior earldom in all of Scotland. The Mormaers of Fife held a privilege no other family in the kingdom had, the right to place the king in his seat at his inauguration. A Scottish king was not properly a king until a Macduff had put him there. They also held the right to lead the vanguard of the Scottish army. If your name is Macduff, your family did not have to be the king. They were the family that made one. Number 9. Kennedy. Carrick, in the southwest. And this is a Gaelic name in a place most people do not expect Gaelic at all. Kennedy is O Sinead, the same name as the great Irish family, and the Scottish Kennedys were lords of Carrick in Ayrshire, a district so stubbornly Gaelic that the language was still spoken there long after it had died out everywhere else in the lowlands. People assume Gaelic means the Highlands. Carrick is the proof that it did not. If your name is Kennedy and your people are Scottish, your kingdom is Carrick. Number 8. MacDowell, the Kingdom of Galloway. This one really was a kingdom. The southwest corner of Scotland was ruled by its own lords, most famously Fergus of Galloway, who behaved like an independent monarch, negotiated with English kings, and answered to the Scottish crown only when it suited him. The Gallovidians were their own people, a mix of Gael and Norse, with their own law that survived for centuries. If your name is MacDowell, your kingdom is Galloway. Number 7. Wallace. And this is the one nobody sees coming. Wallace does not mean anything Scottish. It comes from the same root as Welsh. It meant a foreigner, a Briton, a speaker of the old British tongue. That is because of the Kingdom of Strathclyde, which was a British kingdom, closer to Wales than to anything Gaelic, ruled from the rock at Dumbarton, and which held the Clyde Valley for hundreds of years. When Strathclyde was finally absorbed, the people were still there, still identifiably different, and their neighbors called them the Welsh. That is where the surname comes from, which means that William Wallace, the single most famous Scot in history, the man whose name is a byword for Scottish independence, carried a surname that means he was descended from the Britons, not the Scots. Before I show you the last 6, if you carry one of these names and you want to know which of these peoples your line actually comes from and where it went afterward, I have put the whole thing together in a guide called The Bloodline Archive at dnaorigin.org, linked in the description. But stay right here, because the last name on this list belonged to a kingdom that lasted until 1493 and was never really part of Scotland at all. Number 6. Home, also Hume. The Borders and Berwickshire, and this is the Anglian layer. The southeast of Scotland was Northumbrian, settled by Angles who came up the coast, and it has spoken a Germanic language continuously since the 7th century. That is the origin of Scots, the language of Burns, which is not a corruption of English but a sister of it, descended from the speech of Anglian Lothian. If your name is Home, your kingdom was Northumbria. Number 5. MacNeil. The Isle of Barra in the Outer Hebrides, where the MacNeils held Kissimul Castle, a fortress built on a rock in the middle of a sea bay, reachable only by boat. That is what lordship looked like out there. Not land you could ride across, but water you had to control. The clan claimed descent from Niall of the 9 Hostages, the Irish High King, which places them squarely in the Gaelic stream that came out of Ireland into the Hebrides and never left. Number 4. MacLeod, Lewis, Harris, and Skye, and the name is Norse. MacLeod comes from the Old Norse personal name Ljótur, so the greatest Hebridean clan of the Outer Isles carries a Viking name in Gaelic form. That is exactly what the western seaboard was. Norse rule laid over Gaelic people until the two produced something new, the Gál Gaedhail, the foreign Gaels. Number 3. MacDougall, Lorne, in Argyll. And now we reach the family that produced the Sea Kingdom, because MacDougall descends from Somerled, the 12th century warlord of mixed Norse and Gaelic blood, who broke Norwegian control of the southern Hebrides and carved out a maritime realm of his own. His sons divided it. The MacDougalls took Lorne and the Eastern Isles. Number 2. Campbell, Argyll, and the name of that country tells you what it was. Argyll is Argyll, the coastland of the Gaels. This is where Dál Riata was, the kingdom the Gaels brought across from Ireland, and it is the founding ground of Gaelic Scotland. Everything Scottish about the word Scottish starts here. The Campbells rose to dominate that country and eventually most of the Western Highlands. Which brings us to number 1, MacDonald, the lordship of the Isles, the kingdom that outlasted the others. Somerled's grandson Donald gave the name, and his descendants built something that was not a clan and was not a province. It was a maritime state. The lords of the Isles ruled the Hebrides and the western seaboard from Islay, kept a council of chiefs, held their own courts, maintained a war fleet of galleys, and dealt with the kings of Scotland and England as a foreign power. They signed their own treaty with Edward IV of England. Their title in Gaelic was King of the Isles. It lasted until 1493, when James IV finally forfeited the lordship and broke it up, and the Highlands never recovered a centre after that. Everything that happened afterward, all the way to Culloden, happens in the vacuum left where that kingdom used to be. If your name is MacDonald, your kingdom held out for 300 years against the country you are now assumed to be from. So, how many did you count? And now the twist I promised you. Go back over the list and count the peoples rather than the names. Norse in Sinclair and Gunn and Sutherland and MacLeod, a rival Gaelic kingdom in Murray. Gaels in Kennedy and MacNeil and MacDougall and Campbell. Britons in Wallace. Angles in Home, a half-Norse sea state in MacDonald. That is not one nation with one ancestry. That is 5 separate peoples, speaking 4 different languages, who spent 6 centuries fighting each other and were then bolted into a single country. And here is the part that catches people out. The name of the country belongs to only one of them. Scotland is named for the Scotchi, a Latin word for the Gaels who came over from Ireland into Argyll. 1 group out of 5 won the naming rights, and their language and their word for themselves got stretched over the Picts, the Britons, the Angles, and the Norse, until everyone on that landmass was called Scottish. So when an American says their family is Scottish, that word is covering an enormous amount of ground. It might mean Norse earls in Orkney. It might mean British speakers on the Clyde. It might mean Anglian farmers in the borders whose ancestors never spoke a word of Gaelic. It might mean a sea kingdom in the Hebrides that fought Scotland harder than it ever fought England. Your surname is the only thing left that still tells them apart. That is what these names really are, not one heritage. The last surviving evidence of 5 still sorted into the shape of the kingdoms that made them, 900 years after those kingdoms stopped existing. So tell us in the comments, is your name on this list? Which corner of Scotland did your family come out of? And where in the world did they finally land? And if you want to trace exactly which of these peoples your own bloodline comes from, the Bloodline Archive is waiting for you at dnaorigin.org, linked in the description. Scotland was 5 kingdoms before it was one country. You are carrying one of them. That is the whole story.